Ambassador Lyra stood in the center of the great council chamber, her blue-scaled hands shaking as she held the datapad. The massive dome above her head showed stars from across the galaxy, each one representing a member world of the Galactic Council. Today, she hoped those worlds would save her people. The chamber was filled with beings from dozens of different species. The tall, graceful Aquarians sat in their water-filled pods, their gills moving slowly as they breathed. The crystalline Nixari reflected light in beautiful patterns across the room. The insect-like Vrath clicked their mandibles quietly as they waited. All of them were here to listen to her plea for help. "Honored council members," Lyra began, her voice echoing through the chamber. "My people, the Villani Federation, face complete destruction. The Korthax Empire has begun a full invasion of our space." She activated the holographic display in the center of the room. Images of burning cities appeared in the air above them. Villani civilians, with their blue scales and large eyes, ran through streets filled with smoke and fire. Children cried as their parents carried them away from the destruction. "This is the colony world of Theta Prime," Lyra said, her voice breaking. 2 days ago, it housed 3 million of my people. Now, ... The image changed to show empty ruins and scattered debris. Now there is nothing left. The council members watched in silence. Some looked away from the terrible images. Others leaned forward to see better. "The Korthax war machines are unlike anything we have faced before," Lyra continued. "Their plasma cannons can destroy an entire city block in seconds. Their ships are massive and heavily armed. Our defense forces cannot stop them." She showed more images. Korthax soldiers, tall reptilian beings with dark scales and yellow eyes, marched through captured Villani settlements. Their weapons were crude but effective. Their ships were built for one purpose: war. "They do not take prisoners," Lyra said quietly. "They do not negotiate. They simply destroy everything in their path and take what they want. Our intelligence reports say they are moving toward our homeworld. We have perhaps 1 week before they arrive." The chamber remained silent for several long moments. Finally, Counselor Vel of the Aquarians spoke. "Ambassador Lyra, we understand your situation is terrible, but the Aquarian Republic has been peaceful for over 1,000 years. We have no military ships that could help you." "The Nixari Collective agrees with our Aquarian friends," added Counselor Quinn, her crystalline body chiming softly as she spoke. "Our vessels are built for exploration and trade. They would shatter against Korthax weapons." One by one, the other council members gave similar responses. The Vrath claimed their numbers were too small. The Corellian Union said their ships were needed to defend their own borders. The Zephyrian Alliance explained that their technology was not suitable for warfare. Lyra felt her hope dying with each refusal. Her people had been part of the Galactic Council for over 200 years. They had always followed the rules, always helped others when possible. Now, when they needed help most, everyone turned away. "Please," she said, her voice desperate. "There must be someone who can help us, anyone." Counselor Drex of the Vrath shifted uncomfortably. "There is one possibility," he said slowly, "but it would be extremely dangerous." All eyes turned to him. Lyra stepped forward eagerly. "Tell me." "In the Outer Rim, there is a world listed in our databases as Death Planet Classification, Extreme," Drex explained. "The species there calls themselves humans, but no one has ever made contact with them." "Why not?" asked Counselor Vel. "Because their world tried to kill them every day for millions of years," Drex replied. "Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, massive storms, deadly creatures. The computer models say that any species surviving on such a world would be extremely dangerous." Lyra looked around the chamber. "Have they shown any signs of aggression toward other species?" "No," Drex admitted. "They seem to stay in their own system. But that could be because they are waiting for the right moment to attack. Or," Lyra said hopefully, "it could be because no one has ever asked for their help." The council erupted in worried chatter. Most members seemed afraid of the idea. The Aquarians argued it was too risky. The Nexari worried about what might happen if these humans decided to conquer the galaxy themselves, but Lyra was desperate. Her people were dying while the council debated. "I will take full responsibility," she announced loudly, silencing the chamber. "I will contact these humans myself." "Ambassador, that could be extremely dangerous," warned Counselor Quinn. "My people are already facing extinction," Lyra replied. "What could be more dangerous than that?" She left the council chamber and hurried to the communication center. Her aide, a young Villani named Commander Finn, tried to talk her out of it. "Ambassador, we know nothing about these beings," Finn said as they walked. "They could be monsters. They could eat other species. They could help us," Lyra interrupted. "Everyone else has already said no." In the communication center, Lyra sat down at the long-range transmitter. The technician, a nervous Nexari, helped her locate the human home system. It was far away, in a section of the galaxy that most species avoided. "The signal will take several hours to reach them," the technician explained, "and several more hours for any reply to come back." Lyra nodded and began composing her message. She kept it simple and direct. She explained who she was, where the Villani Federation was located, and what was happening to her people. She included images of the Korthax attacks and data about their military strength. At the end of the message, she added a personal plea: "We need help. Our children are dying. Please, if there is any mercy in your species, help us." She sent the message into the void and waited. Hours passed. Lyra stayed in the communication center, drinking bitter Villani tea and staring at the empty receiver. Finn brought her updates from their homeworld. The news was bad. More colonies had fallen. Refugees were flooding toward the capital system. Then, much sooner than anyone expected, the receiver crackled to life. The message was short and simple. "Message received. Fleet dispatched, estimated time of arrival, 72 hours. Lyra stared at the words on the screen. No questions about payment. No demands for treaties or trade agreements. No requests for more information, just a simple promise to help. "They are coming," she whispered to Finn. "The humans are coming." As she spoke, another alarm sounded in the communication center. The technician's crystalline form flashed bright red with alarm. "Ambassador," he said urgently, "I am detecting a Korthax scout ship at the edge of our system." "They are scanning our communications." Lyra felt her blood turn cold. The Korthax had found them. And now they knew that the Villani had called for help. The hunt was about to begin. Captain Rex Torres stood on the bridge of the UES Nemesis, watching the stars blur past as his fleet traveled through hyperspace. Around him, 200 ships of the Human Colonial Defense Force moved in perfect formation, the massive dreadnought. Prometheus led the center group, while destroyers and carriers spread out in protective patterns. "How much longer until we reach Villani space?" Torres asked his navigation officer. 6 hours, sir," Lieutenant Blake reported. "All ships are maintaining formation and running silent." Torres nodded and walked over to where Lieutenant Maya Knox was reviewing data files. Knox was the fleet's xenobiologist, one of the few humans who had studied alien species from the galactic databases. "Tell me about these Villani," Torres said, looking at the images on her screen. "Amphibious humanoids," Knox explained, pointing to pictures of blue-scaled beings. "They evolved on a water world with low gravity. Their bones are hollow, like bird bones on Earth. Their organs are very delicate compared to ours." "How delicate?" Torres asked. "If we subjected them to the same G forces our ships can handle, it would probably kill them," Knox said seriously. "Their distress message mentioned children dying. That alone tells us they are a species that cares about protecting their young." Torres studied the images more carefully. The Villani looked peaceful, almost fragile. It was hard to imagine them as warriors. "What about these Korthax who are attacking them?" Knox switched to different files. "Reptilian species much larger than humans. Average height is about 3 meters. They have thick scales, redundant organs, and appear to be naturally aggressive. Their empire is built on conquest and slavery." "Sounds Charming, Torres muttered. Do we have any data on their military capabilities? Some, Knox replied. They use plasma-based weapons and heavy armor. Their ships are designed purely for warfare, but Captain ... She hesitated. What is it? We have never fought an alien species before. We do not know how our weapons will perform against their technology. We could be walking into a trap. Torres understood her concern. Humanity had fought wars among themselves for thousands of years, but this was different. These were true aliens with unknown capabilities. Alert the fleet, he ordered. We drop out of hyperspace in 6 hours. I want all ships ready for immediate combat operations. The next few hours passed quickly. Throughout the fleet, human crew members prepared for battle. In the armory of the destroyer Harbinger, Captain Elena Vasquez checked her ship's kinetic projectile systems. These weapons had been designed to punch through asteroid hulls and space debris on the Marine Transport Warrior. Colonel Jack Reeves briefed his boarding specialists. These men and women had trained for zero-gravity combat in the asteroid belts. Around Earth, they knew how to fight in space better than any previous generation of humans. In the medical bay of the Nemesis, Dr. Lisa Park prepared for casualties. She had studied the Villani physiology files and was ready to treat both human and alien wounded. All ships report ready, Lieutenant Blake announced as they approached the drop point. Take us out of hyperspace, Torres ordered. The stars stopped, blurring and snapped back into focus. Immediately, the bridge erupted with activity. Captain, I am reading multiple contacts, reported the sensor officer. 12 large vessels in defensive formation around the Villani system. Korthax? Torres asked. Confirmed, sir. They appear to be blockading the system. Torres frowned. This was not what they had expected. Open a channel to the lead Korthax vessel. The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of an alien warship. The figure that appeared was massive, even by human standards. The Korthax. Commander stood nearly 3 meters tall, with dark green scales covering his reptilian face. His yellow eyes looked like those of a predator studying prey. Unknown vessels, the alien said in heavily accented galactic standard. I am Admiral Voss of the Korthax Empire. You have entered territory claimed by the Empire. Identify yourselves immediately. Torres stepped forward. I am Captain Rex Torres of the Human Colonial Defense Force. We received a distress call from the Villani Federation. We are here to provide assistance. Admiral Voss laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. Humans? I have never heard of your species. You are clearly not from this region of the galaxy. No, we are not, Torres agreed. But that does not change why we are here. The Villani belong to the Korthax Empire now, Voss declared. They called for help, but help will not come. You will leave this system immediately, or you will be destroyed. Torres looked around his bridge. His crew watched him carefully, waiting for orders. Chief Gunner Dante Williams had his fingers hovering over the weapon controls, ready to fire at a moment's notice. Admiral Voss, Torres said calmly, we have traveled a great distance to answer a call for help. We do not plan to leave without completing our mission. Your mission? Voss seemed amused. You have 12 ships against my 12 battlecruisers. Even if you fight well, you cannot win. We have more than 12 ships, Torres replied, as if summoned by his words. The rest of the human fleet began dropping out of hyperspace. Destroyer after destroyer appeared, followed by carriers and support vessels. The massive dreadnought Prometheus emerged last, its bulk dwarfing even the largest Korthax vessel, Admiral. Voss's amusement faded as he counted the ships appearing around him. 200 vessels, he muttered. Where did you find so many ships? We built them, Torres said simply. Admiral Voss, I will give you one chance to withdraw from this system peacefully. The Villani have requested our protection, and we intend to provide it. The Korthax commander's eyes narrowed. You dare threaten the Korthax Empire? We have conquered dozens of species. Our warriors are bred for battle. Our ships are the most powerful in this sector of the galaxy. Perhaps, Torres said, but you have never fought humans before. For a long moment, the two commanders stared at each other across the vast distance of space. The tension on both bridges was thick enough to cut with a knife. "Captain," reported the sensor officer quietly, "I am detecting massive energy buildups on all Korthax vessels." "They are powering up their weapons," Torres nodded. He had expected this. Red alert. All ships prepare for combat operations. Throughout the human fleet, alarms began sounding. Crews raced to battle stations. Weapon systems came online. Shield. Generators powered up to full strength. "Admiral Voss," Torres said one last time, "withdraw now or face the consequences." The Korthax commander showed his teeth in what might have been a smile. "I think not, human. You are about to learn why the galaxy fears the Korthax Empire." "Captain," the sensor officer reported urgently, "massive hyperspace signatures detected at the edge of the system, multiple large contacts jumping in." Torres felt his heart sink as the sensors showed what was arriving. Another Korthax fleet, this one much larger than the first. Over 400 ships emerged from hyperspace, surrounding the human fleet on all sides. Admiral Voss's laughter filled the bridge. "Did you really think this was our entire force? You are trapped, humans. Surrender now, and perhaps some of you will live to serve the Empire." Torres looked at the tactical display showing hundreds of enemy ships surrounding his fleet. His crew waited for his orders, ready to fight against impossible odds. "All ships," he said quietly into his communicator, "we came here to help people who could not help themselves. That mission has not changed regardless of the odds we face." The battle was about to begin. The space around the Villani system exploded into chaos as both fleets opened fire simultaneously. Brilliant beams of plasma energy lanced out from the Korthax battlecruisers, each shot powerful enough to vaporize a small moon. The reptilian commanders expected to see human ships disintegrating under the overwhelming firepower. Instead, something unexpected happened. The human vessels did not die. They twisted and rolled through space like living things, their hulls absorbing hits that should have destroyed them completely. Point defense systems tracked the incoming plasma bolts with impossible accuracy, shooting down projectiles that moved at nearly the speed of light. "Impossible," Admiral Voss snarled from his command bridge. "Nothing can survive direct hits from our plasma cannons." But the humans were not just surviving, they were adapting. The destroyer Harbinger, commanded by Captain Elena Vasquez, had taken 3 direct hits to its port side. Any other ship in the galaxy would have been crippled. Instead, Vasquez ordered her crew to route power from the damaged sections and continue fighting. "Emergency repairs complete," her engineering officer reported. "Hull integrity at 60%, but all weapons are still operational." "Good," Vasquez replied grimly. "Target the lead Korthax cruiser. Load kinetic penetrator rounds." The Harbinger's main guns fired, sending solid projectiles at incredible speeds toward the enemy ship. The Korthax had never encountered kinetic weapons before. Their shields, designed to stop energy beams, were useless against chunks of superdense metal moving at relativistic speeds. The first round punched completely through the Korthax battlecruiser's armor, creating a hole 3 meters wide. The second round hit the ship's power core, causing a massive explosion that lit up space for thousands of kilometers. "Direct hit," reported the gunner. "Enemy vessel destroyed." Throughout the battle zone, similar scenes played out as human ships demonstrated technologies and tactics the Korthax had never seen. The carrier Valkyrie launched fighters that moved like schools of fish, swarming around larger enemy vessels while staying perfectly coordinated. These fighters had been designed to operate in the asteroid fields around Earth, where a single mistake meant death. On the dreadnought Prometheus, Admiral Sarah Connor coordinated the overall battle plan. Her ship's massive railguns could fire projectiles the size of city buses, each one capable of punching through multiple enemy vessels. "All ships, focus fire on their command vessels," she ordered. "Take out their ability to coordinate, and the rest will fall apart." But the humans were vastly outnumbered. For every Korthax ship they destroyed, 3 more took its place. Slowly but steadily, the human fleet began taking serious damage. The destroyer Phoenix lost its main engines and began drifting helplessly. The cruiser Titan had its bridge destroyed, forcing the crew to fight from the secondary command center. Human ships that had seemed invincible began showing signs of serious damage. Meanwhile, on the planet below, Ambassador Lyra watched the battle through orbital telescopes. Her people crowded around her in the capital city's emergency bunker, all of them staring at the screens showing the fight above their world. "The humans are fighting for us," whispered an elderly Villani scientist. "They traveled across the galaxy to help people they have never met." But they are losing," Lyra said quietly. "There are too many Korthax ships." Her aide, Commander Finn, looked up from a communication console. "Ambassador, I am receiving reports from our outer colonies." "Korthax. Ground forces have landed on 3 different worlds. They are advancing on civilian shelters." Lyra felt her heart sink. While the space battle raged above, Korthax troops were already on the ground, hunting her people like animals. "How long before they reach the civilian areas?" 6 hours, maybe." "Less," Finn replied. On the Nemesis, Captain Torres received the same information. His tactical officer highlighted the Korthax landing zones on the main display. "Captain, if we break off from the main battle to help on the surface, we will be even more outnumbered up here." Torres studied the display for a long moment. His fleet was already fighting against impossible odds. If he divided his forces, both the space battle and the ground assault would be lost. "Send a message to Colonel Reeves on the Warrior," he ordered. "Tell him to take his Marines and hit those landing zones. We will hold the line up here." The Marine transport Warrior broke away from the main fleet and dove toward the planet's surface. Behind it, several smaller ships followed, carrying the human ground forces toward their first combat with alien enemies. Colonel Jack Reeves stood in the Warrior's drop bay, addressing his Marines. These men and women had trained for combat in every environment Earth could provide, from frozen Arctic wastelands to volcanic hellscapes. They wore powered armor designed to protect them from radiation, extreme temperatures, and hostile atmospheres. "Listen up," Reeves shouted over the sound of the ship's engines. "We are about to fight aliens for the first time in human history. They are bigger than us, stronger than us, and they have been conquering other species for centuries." He paused, looking at the faces of his troops. "But they have never fought humans before. They do not know what we are capable of. They do not know that we come from a world that tried to kill us every single day for millions of years." The Marines cheered, banging their weapons against their armor. "Our job is simple," Reeves continued. "Protect the civilians. Stop the Korthax advance. Show them what happens when someone threatens innocent people in front of humans." The Warrior entered the planet's atmosphere, its hull glowing red from the heat of re-entry. Below, Korthax dropships were landing in waves, disgorging troops that began advancing on Villani settlements. The first Korthax ground commander to encounter human Marines was General Hux, a veteran of 12 conquered worlds. His reptilian features showed confidence as he watched his forces advance. The Villani had no military to speak of. This would be an easy victory. Then the human dropships arrived. The Marines hit the ground running, their powered armor allowing them to move faster than any Korthax soldier. Their weapons fired projectiles that punched through reptilian scales like paper. Most shocking of all, they showed no fear whatsoever. Private Kyle Nash found himself face to face with a Korthax warrior twice his size. The alien raised a massive weapon, confident that the small human would flee in terror. Instead, Nash charged forward, using his armor's built-in boosters to leap directly at the alien's throat. The Korthax warrior had never seen such aggressive tactics. In all their previous conquests, enemy soldiers had tried to fight from a distance or surrender quickly. They had never encountered beings that seemed to enjoy close combat. General Hux watched in growing alarm as his forces began falling back. "What are these creatures?" he demanded. "They fight like wild animals." "Sir," reported one of his officers, "they appear to be from a high-gravity world. Their bone density is 3 times normal. Their muscle fibers are incredibly dense. And their reaction times ... The officer paused. They are faster than our computer models said was possible for organic beings. Back in space, the battle continued to rage. Admiral Voss was growing increasingly frustrated as his fleet struggled against the smaller human force. His ships had superior firepower and numbers, but the humans fought with a coordination and ferocity he had never encountered. "How are they doing this?" he demanded. "Our intelligence says they are a primitive species from the outer rim." His science officer studied the tactical displays. "Admiral, I believe they evolved on what we would classify as a death world. Look at their ship designs. They are built to withstand impacts that would destroy our vessels. Their weapons are designed for maximum efficiency rather than intimidation. And their tactics? They fight like predators, sir, pack hunters. Each ship supports the others, but they can also operate independently if needed. It is unlike anything in our tactical databases." As the battle entered its third hour, both fleets had taken heavy losses. But something was becoming clear. The humans were not just surviving against impossible odds. They were actually winning on his command bridge. Torres watched as another Korthax battlecruiser exploded under concentrated human fire. His fleet had been reduced to less than half its original strength, but they had destroyed nearly 200 enemy vessels. "Captain," his sensor officer reported, "massive energy signatures detected at the system edge. Multiple hyperspace openings." Torres felt his blood run cold. If this was another Korthax fleet, the battle was over, but what emerged from hyperspace was not more Korthax ships. It was something far worse. The hyperspace rifts opened like wounds in space itself, and from them emerged the largest military force the galaxy had seen in centuries. Over 800 Korthax vessels appeared at the edge of the Villani system, their dark hulls bristling with weapons that could reduce planets to rubble. At the center of this massive armada was the flagship Devastator, a ship so large it could be seen with the naked eye from the planet's surface. On its bridge stood General Kron the Destroyer, the most feared military commander in Korthax history. His scarred reptilian face showed no emotion as he surveyed the battlefield. "Admiral Voss," Kron's voice rumbled through the communication channels, "explain to me how a few primitive ships have caused such destruction to our forces." Admiral Voss appeared on the screen, his earlier confidence completely gone. "General, these humans are unlike any species we have encountered. Their ships refuse to die, their weapons penetrate our strongest armor, and their tactics..." "Silence," Kron interrupted. "I have conquered 47 worlds. I have broken the spirits of dozens of species. These humans will be no different." Kron studied the tactical display showing the human fleet. The barely 150 ships remained operational after the brutal battle with Voss's forces. Against his 800 fresh vessels, the outcome seemed certain. "All ships," Kron commanded, "advance in battle formation. We will crush these humans and complete the conquest of this system." On the bridge of the Nemesis, Captain Torres watched the massive enemy fleet approaching. His crew worked frantically to repair damage from the previous battle, but everyone knew they were facing impossible odds. "Captain," reported his communications. "Officer, message coming in from the planet's surface. The Villani are requesting evacuation assistance." Torres looked at the tactical display. His remaining ships were barely holding together, and now they faced an enemy force 5 times larger than anything they had previously encountered. The logical choice would be to retreat, save what was left of his fleet, and return with reinforcements, but then he thought about the distress message that had brought them here. "We need help. Our children are dying." "All ships," Torres announced on the fleet-wide channel, "form defensive screen around the planet. We did not come this far to abandon innocent people." Throughout the human fleet, damaged ships moved into position between the Korthax armada and the Villani homeworld. Captains who had already lost half their crews prepared to face an enemy that outnumbered them 8-1. Captain Elena Vesquez, her destroyer Harbinger running on emergency power, positioned her ship directly in the path of the approaching enemy. "Engineering, how much do we have left?" Main weapons at 60%, Captain, her chief engineer reported. Engines at 40%. Hull integrity ... Quotes, he paused. We have taken too much damage. One more major hit, and we are finished. Then we better make our shots count, Vasquez replied grimly. The battle resumed with even greater intensity than before. General Kron's fresh ships attacked with overwhelming firepower, their plasma cannons lighting up space like artificial suns. But something strange happened as his forces closed in on the human defensive line. The human ships did not retreat. Instead, they formed smaller groups and fought with a coordination that seemed almost supernatural. When one ship was damaged, others immediately moved to cover it. When a vessel's weapons failed, nearby ships adjusted their fire patterns to compensate. On the surface of the planet, Colonel Jack Reeves and his Marines fought a different kind of battle against Korthak's ground forces. His troops had established a defensive perimeter around the largest Villani civilian shelter, where thousands of refugees huddled in underground bunkers. "Colonel," reported Sergeant Lisa Park over the radio, "Korthak's forces are advancing on the eastern perimeter. We count at least 200 enemy troops." Reeves checked his ammunition supply. His Marines had been fighting for hours, and their supplies were running low. But behind them, Villani families waited in terror, trusting humans they had never met to protect their children. "All units, hold the line," Reeves ordered. "No one gets through." The Korthak's ground assault began with heavy weapons fire that shook the earth. Trees exploded into splinters and the air filled with smoke and debris. Through this chaos, reptilian warriors advanced, their scales gleaming in the light of burning vegetation. Private Kyle Nash crouched behind a rocky outcropping, watching enemy soldiers approach his position. Each Korthak's warrior stood over 3 meters tall and carried weapons that could punch through concrete walls. By all logic, he should have been terrified. Instead, Nash found himself thinking about the Villani children he had seen in the shelter. Some of them could not have been more than 5 years old, their large eyes wide with fear as explosions echoed above their heads. "Not today," Nash muttered and opened fire. His assault rifle spat armor-piercing rounds at a rate that surprised the advancing Korthaks. These aliens had expected primitive weapons from an unknown species. Instead, they faced firearms designed by a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing other humans. In space, the battle reached a critical moment when Lieutenant Maya Knox made a crucial discovery. Working frantically in the Nemesis laboratory, she had been analyzing data from destroyed Korthak ships. "Captain Torres," she called urgently, "I have found something important about Korthak's physiology." Torres hurried to her station. "What is it?" "Their redundant nervous system," Knox explained rapidly. "It makes them nearly immune to energy weapons, but kinetic projectiles cause cascading organ failure. Our solid ammunition is exponentially more effective than anyone realized." Torres immediately passed this information to the entire fleet. Within minutes, human ships began switching to pure kinetic weapons. The effect was dramatic and immediate. The destroyer Phoenix, which had been barely holding its own against 2 Korthak's cruisers, suddenly became a deadly predator. Its railguns fired solid projectiles that passed completely through enemy hulls, causing catastrophic internal damage. General Kron watched his forces begin to falter and felt something he had not experienced in decades: doubt. "How are they doing this?" he demanded. "We have them outnumbered and outgunned." His tactical officers studied the displays with growing alarm. "General, they are not fighting like any species in our databases. Most conquered peoples try to preserve their own forces. These humans seem willing to sacrifice themselves for strangers." "Impossible," Kron snarled. "No species would fight to the death for aliens they have never met." But even as he spoke, he could see evidence of exactly that happening. Human ships with critical damage continued fighting until they were completely destroyed. Marines on the surface held positions that should have been abandoned hours ago. Then Kron made the decision that would define the rest of the battle. Frustrated by his force's inability to break through the human defenses, he ordered orbital bombardment of civilian targets. "All heavy cruisers," he commanded, "target the Villani cities." If we cannot defeat these humans in direct combat, we will force them to surrender by threatening the people they are protecting. Massive plasma beams lanced down from orbit, striking Villani population centers. Buildings that had stood for centuries turned to vapor in seconds. Civilian emergency shelters, clearly marked with non-combatant symbols, disappeared in balls of superheated gas on the planet's surface. Colonel Reeves watched entire city blocks vanish in the bombardment. His radio crackled with desperate reports from Villani civilians trapped in the inferno. "Colonel," called Sergeant Park, "massive casualties in the capital district. They are targeting hospitals and schools." Reeves felt something cold and deadly settle in his chest. In all his years of military service, he had never seen anyone deliberately target civilians. The Korthax had just crossed a line that humans considered sacred. He opened a channel to Captain Torres. "Captain, they are killing civilians on purpose. Hospitals, schools, refugee centers." On the bridge of the Nemesis, Torres received similar reports from across the planet. Korthax ships were systematically destroying anything that might shelter non-combatants. Children were dying while their parents watched helplessly from underground bunkers. Torres looked around his bridge at faces filled with cold fury. His crew had been willing to fight and die to protect strangers, but this was different. This was murder of innocents on a massive scale. "Communications," Torres said quietly. "Fleet-wide channel." When the channel opened, Torres spoke in a voice that carried absolute authority. "All ships, you have witnessed what the Korthax Empire does to civilians. They have just forfeited any right to mercy or quarter." He paused, looking at the tactical display showing hundreds of enemy ships. "All vessels switched to Protocol 7. No prisoners, no mercy. These aliens want to see what humans are capable of when we stop holding back." Throughout the human fleet, the response was immediate and terrifying. Ships that had been fighting defensively suddenly became predators. Weapons that had been set for minimum necessary force switched to maximum destructive power. The dreadnought Prometheus, which had been using its railguns sparingly to conserve ammunition, began firing at full rate. Each shot could penetrate multiple enemy hulls, turning single projectiles into weapons of mass destruction. General Kron watched his tactical display with growing horror as human ships began systematically destroying his forces with an efficiency that seemed almost mechanical. These were no longer desperate defenders. They had become something far more dangerous. "What have we awakened?" He whispered. "What happened next would be remembered throughout the galaxy as the moment humanity announced its arrival as a major power." The human fleet, now fighting with the cold efficiency of a species that had survived ice ages and mass extinctions, began systematically destroying the Korthax armada. The transformation was immediate and terrifying. Ships that had been fighting defensively suddenly became apex predators. The destroyer Harbinger, previously struggling to survive, now moved through enemy formations like a shark through a school of fish. Captain Elena Vasquez ordered her crew to target the command sections of every Korthax vessel, cutting off their ability to coordinate. "Target their bridges first," she commanded. "Make them fight as individuals instead of as a fleet." Her railguns fired with mechanical precision, each shot carefully calculated to cause maximum disruption to enemy command structure. Within minutes, a dozen Korthax cruisers were drifting helplessly, their command crews dead and their systems in chaos. The massive dreadnought Prometheus had become something out of a nightmare. Admiral Sarah Connor stood on her bridge like an avenging angel, directing the ship's incredible firepower with surgical precision. The Prometheus's main guns could fire projectiles the size of small buildings, and Connor was using them to devastating effect. "Target the Korthax flagship," ordered coldly. "I want to have a conversation with General Kron." The Prometheus moved toward the Devastator with frightening determination. Korthax ships tried to block its path, but the human dreadnought simply smashed through them. Its armor, designed to withstand the impacts of asteroids and solar radiation, barely registered the enemy fire. General Kron watched in growing terror as the human ship approached his flagship. Nothing in his experience had prepared him for this level of focused destruction. The humans were not just winning, they were demonstrating a kind of warfare that the Korthax had never imagined possible. "All ships, concentrate fire on that dreadnought," Kron commanded desperately. "Stop it before it reaches us." 50 Korthax vessels turned their weapons on the Prometheus, filling space with enough plasma energy to melt a small moon. But the human ship continued its advance, its point defense systems intercepting most of the incoming fire while its armor absorbed the rest. When the Prometheus finally reached weapon range of the Devastator, Admiral Connor opened a communication channel. "General Kron, this is Admiral Connor of the Human Colonial Defense Force. You ordered the murder of civilians." "That was your mistake." Kron appeared on the screen, his reptilian features twisted with rage and fear. "You cannot defeat the Korthax Empire. We have thousands of ships across the galaxy." "Then you better recall them all," Connor replied. "Because after what you did here, humanity is coming for every single one of you." The Prometheus fired its main guns at point-blank range. The massive projectiles punched through the Devastator's armor like it was paper, causing catastrophic explosions throughout the ship. In seconds, the largest vessel in the Korthax fleet was reduced to expanding debris. General Kron's last transmission was a scream of rage that cut off abruptly as his command bridge disintegrated. On the planet's surface, the battle had turned. Just as decisively, Colonel Jack Reeves and his Marines, fighting with the fury of humans protecting innocence, had broken the Korthax ground assault completely. The alien warriors, bred for conquest and trained for intimidation, found themselves facing opponents who seemed to grow more dangerous the longer the fight continued. Human Marines moved through the battlefield like ghosts, appearing from concealment to strike at enemy weak points before vanishing again. Private Kyle Nash had single-handedly held a critical choke point for over an hour, his position surrounded by the bodies of Korthax warriors who had tried to break through. When reinforcements finally reached him, they found him still firing at enemy positions, his armor scored by weapons hits but his determination unbroken. "How many did you stop?" asked Sergeant Lisa Park as she reached his position. "Lost count." "After 30, Nash replied, reloading his weapon. "But none of them got through to the civilian shelter." Throughout the Villani system, the tide of battle had turned completely. Korthax ships that had seemed invincible hours earlier were now fleeing in panic or burning in space. The ground forces that had expected an easy conquest were trapped on hostile worlds, cut off from orbital support and facing human Marines who fought like demons. Ambassador Lyra stood in the ruins of her capital city, watching human medics tend to wounded Villani civilians with surprising gentleness. The same hands that had wielded weapons of war were now carefully bandaging amphibious skin and adjusting gravity fields for creatures 1/10 their weight. "Why?" she asked Captain Torres when he came to the surface to coordinate rescue efforts. "Why did your people risk everything for strangers?" Torres looked around at the destruction caused by the Korthax bombardment, then at the human and Villani personnel working together to rescue survivors from the rubble. "Because someone called for help," he said simply. "And because protecting those who cannot protect themselves is what separates civilization from barbarism." The aftermath of the battle was swift and decisive. The remaining Korthax forces, leaderless and demoralized, surrendered within hours. Those who tried to flee found human ships blocking every escape route from the system. But the most significant moment came 3 days later, when Captain Torres received a priority communication from Earth. The Galactic Council, which had refused to help the Villani, was now requesting an emergency session to discuss humanity's application for membership. Torres stood in the council chamber where Ambassador Lyra had once begged for help. The same representatives who had turned away from Villani suffering now hung on his every word. "Honored council members," Torres began, "humanity formally requests membership in the Galactic Council. We come in peace, seeking cooperation and mutual benefit among all species." Councillor Vell of the Aquarians spoke first. "Captain Torres, your fleet's actions in the Villani system have sent shockwaves throughout civilized space. Some species are asking what humanity's intentions are for the galaxy. Our intentions are simple: Torres replied. We want to explore, to learn, to trade, and to help where help is needed. But we also want to make something very clear to every species in this galaxy. He paused, looking around the chamber at faces both curious and fearful. Humanity will not stand by while innocent people suffer. We will not ignore calls for help from those who cannot defend themselves. And we will never tolerate the deliberate targeting of civilians. The silence in the chamber was profound. Every representative understood the implications of those words. The vote for human membership in the Galactic Council is now open, announced. The Council Secretary. The result was unanimous. Over the following months, the story of the Villani liberation spread throughout the galaxy. Species that had never heard of humans suddenly found themselves fascinated by the Deathworlders who had crossed space to save strangers. The Villani erected monuments, honoring their human protectors with inscriptions in both languages, to those who came when no one else would answer. The Korthax Empire, shattered by the loss of their primary fleet and most feared general, signed the first peace treaty in their history. The terms were simple: no more conquest, no more slavery, no more targeting of civilians. Human embassies began appearing on worlds throughout the galaxy, each one staffed by diplomatic corps trained in both negotiation and combat. The message was clear: humanity preferred peace, but was prepared for war on Earth. Recruitment for the Colonial Defense Force increased dramatically as humans volunteered to serve in the fleets that now patrolled space lanes and responded to distress calls. Captain Torres, now promoted to Admiral, stood on the bridge of his new flagship and reviewed the latest reports. Trade agreements with 17 species, mutual defense pacts with 12 governments, and most importantly, 43 successful rescue operations. In systems where local authorities had been overwhelmed by pirates, natural disasters, or hostile forces, Admiral, reported his communications officer, we are receiving a distress signal from the Talar system. Unknown attackers have overwhelmed the planetary defense forces. Torres looked at the star chart showing the distant system where another species faced extinction. His fleet was already moving before he gave the order. Set course for the Talar system, maximum speed, he commanded. Send a message ahead, help is on the way. As the human fleet jumped to hyperspace heading toward another desperate battle against impossible odds, the legend continued to grow. Throughout the galaxy, beings who had lost hope began to believe again. Children who had hidden in bunkers during attacks now looked to the stars with trust instead of fear. They had wanted help, and they had gotten the Deathworlder war fleet. But more than that, they had discovered that somewhere in the cold depths of space, there existed a species that would cross any distance and face any odds to protect the innocent. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. In the depths of space, new distress signals waited. And somewhere, human crews prepared to answer them, carrying a simple message that had begun to echo across star systems. We heard your call, we are coming. The age of human protection had begun. Maya rubbed her tired eyes and looked at the clock on her console. 3 more hours until her shift ended at Kepler Station. The deep space communications hub floated quietly in the void between Mars and Jupiter, processing thousands of routine messages every day. Most nights were boring, but tonight felt different somehow. She stretched in her chair and reached for another cup of coffee. The station was almost empty during the night shift. Only essential crew remained awake while the rest of the facility slept. Maya preferred it this way. No supervisors looking over her shoulder. No chattering coworkers disturbing her concentration. A soft beep came from her terminal. Another supply request from the mining platform near Europa. Maya glanced at the message without really reading. Standard stuff about oxygen tanks and protein bars. She started the automatic routing process. But her finger slipped on the console. Instead of sending the message through the normal civilian channels, she accidentally selected an old frequency from the archived list. The number looked strange, almost ancient. Maya frowned and tried to correct her mistake, but the message had already been transmitted. Oh well, she muttered to herself. Probably just bounced off some old satellite. Far from Maya's station, the signal traveled through space at the speed of light. It passed several communication satellites and bounced off their reflective surfaces. Each bounce sent the signal further and further from its intended destination. The message reached the outer edge of the solar system where old satellites drifted silently in the darkness. These satellites had been forgotten for over 200 years. Most people thought they were just space junk left over from humanity's early expansion into space, but when Maya's signal reached them, something unexpected happened. The ancient satellites began to wake up, deep inside each satellite. Computer systems that had been sleeping for centuries suddenly came online. Green lights flickered in the darkness. Power systems activated. Communication arrays turned toward Earth and began transmitting. Captain Vex of the Talarian Trade Consortium was having a bad day. His cargo ship had been traveling through this boring part of space for weeks, pretending to be a merchant vessel. In reality, he was conducting illegal scans of human space defenses. The Talarian High Council wanted to know how strong Earth's military really was. Humans seemed weak and primitive compared to other species in the galaxy. Their technology looked simple, their ships appeared old, and they rarely showed aggressive behavior. Vex was supposed to gather intelligence about human weapons and defensive systems. So far he had found very little. A few patrol ships, some mining platforms, and lots of commercial traffic. Nothing that looked like a real military force. He was about to finish his scan and head home when his sensors detected something unusual. Energy signatures were appearing all over the solar system. Massive power sources were coming online everywhere he looked. "What in the void is happening?" Vex whispered as he stared at his displays, the objects his scanners had identified as mining. Platforms were changing. Their energy output was increasing by enormous amounts. Structures that had looked like simple cargo containers were unfolding and reshaping themselves. Vex activated his ship's most powerful sensors and aimed them at the nearest energy source. What he saw made his blood run cold. The mining platform was actually a massive warship disguised to look harmless. Weapon systems were powering up along its hull. Point defense turrets were emerging from hidden compartments all around the solar system. Similar transformations were taking place. Asteroids was splitting open to reveal battleships hidden inside. Space debris was rearranging itself into defensive formations. Even some of the communication satellites were deploying weapon arrays. Vex quickly began recording everything his sensors could detect. The Talari High Council would never believe this without proof. Humanity had been hiding an enormous war. Fleet in plain sight. They had fooled every intelligence agency in the galaxy. The captain started calculating how many ships were powering up. Hundreds, maybe thousands. Each one was larger and more advanced than anything the Talarians possessed. The humans had not only been lying about their military strength, they had been building weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Back on Kepler Station, Maya was getting ready to file her incident report about the misrouted message when something strange appeared on her communication screen. An incoming transmission was being received on the same ancient frequency she had accidentally used. The message was short and simple, but it made Maya's heart race with fear. The words appeared in perfect English, transmitted with military encryption, protocols that should not have existed. Warfleet Omega acknowledging activation signal. All units coming online. Weapons systems charging. Defensive positions activated. Awaiting enemy coordinates and attack authorization. Maya stared at the message for several seconds, unable to believe what she was reading. She checked the transmission source and found that it was coming from multiple locations throughout the solar system. Dozens of powerful transmitters were broadcasting the same message. She tried to send a reply, asking who was transmitting and what they meant by Warfleet Omega, but received only automated responses. The systems sending these messages were clearly military in nature, but Maya had never heard of any human military operation by that name. Fear began to grow in her stomach as she realized what her accident might have caused. She had somehow activated something that was supposed to stay hidden. Something big enough to call itself a war fleet. Maya quickly sent an emergency message to Earth Defense Command explaining what had happened. She included copies of all the strange transmissions she had received. Then she sat back in her chair and waited for someone to tell her that this was all a mistake, but deep down, she knew it was not a mistake. The messages were too professional, too coordinated. Somewhere in human space, a secret military force was waking up after a very long sleep. And Maya had been the one to wake them up. As the hours passed, more and more transmissions came through on the ancient frequency. Ship names she had never heard of. Unit designations that did not match any official military records. Weapon systems. With capabilities that seemed impossible, Maya realized that everything humanity had told the galaxy about their military strength had been a lie. They were not weak. They were not primitive. They had been hiding their true power for reasons she could not understand, and now, because of her simple mistake, that hidden power was awakening. Maya could only hope that when the galaxy discovered humanity's secret, the consequences would not be too terrible to survive. Admiral Kane was enjoying his morning coffee on the porch of his small house when the emergency communicator buzzed. At 89 years old, he had been retired from military service for over 20 years. Very few people had his private number, and even fewer would dare use it. He picked up the device with hands that still moved steadily despite his age. The voice on the other end belonged to General Morrison, current head of Earth Defense Command. Morrison sounded worried, which was unusual for a man known for staying calm under pressure. "Kane, we need you here immediately. Something has been activated, and we think you're the only one who knows what it is." Kane felt a cold chill run down his spine. He had hoped this day would never come, but he had always known it was possible. "How bad is it, Morrison?" "We're tracking massive energy signatures throughout the solar system. Ships are powering up everywhere using technology we don't recognize. They're responding to some kind of activation signal, but we can't determine the source." Kane closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "I'll be there in 2 hours. In the meantime, do not attempt to communicate with any of the awakening units. Do not approach them. And whatever you do, do not treat them as hostile until I arrive." The old admiral ended the call and walked slowly into his house. In a hidden compartment behind his bookshelf, he found a sealed briefcase that he had not opened in decades. Inside were documents that officially did not exist, containing secrets that could change how the galaxy viewed humanity forever. 3 hours later, Kane stood in the main briefing room at Earth Defense Command headquarters. Around the table sat the most senior military and political leaders on Earth. All of them looked confused and worried as they stared at the massive holographic display showing the solar system. Hundreds of red dots marked the locations of the awakening ships. Each dot represented a vessel larger and more powerful than anything currently in service with Earth's official military forces. The display showed weapon signatures that exceeded the specifications of humanity's most advanced warships. "Gentlemen," Kane began, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded fleets in humanity's darkest hour. "What you are seeing is the activation of War Fleet Omega, humanity's true defensive force. For over 200 years, this fleet has remained hidden, disguised as civilian infrastructure throughout our solar system." The room erupted in confused voices as officials demanded explanations. Kane raised his hand for silence and continued speaking. 2 centuries ago, humanity's first contact with alien life was not the peaceful encounter described in our history books. We were attacked by an aggressive species called the Hegemony Empire. They nearly destroyed our entire civilization in a matter of weeks. Kane activated a hidden section of the holographic display, showing classified historical records. Images appeared of burning cities, destroyed space stations, and human colonies reduced to ash. We survived that attack by playing dead. We convinced the galaxy that we were primitive, weak, and barely capable of space travel. While they ignored us as a minor species, we spent 200 years building the most advanced military force in known space. General Morrison leaned forward in his chair. You're telling us that every mining platform, every communication satellite, every piece of civilian infrastructure in our system is actually a military vessel? Kane nodded gravely. Not every piece, but many of them. We designed a defensive network that could activate instantly if humanity ever faced extinction again. The ships you see awakening have been waiting patiently for this moment, maintained by automated systems and staffed by volunteers who dedicated their lives to this. Secret. Far from Earth, in a sector of space controlled by the Talarian Trade Consortium, Fleet Commander Rickson was studying the intelligence report submitted by Captain Vex. The report described massive human military assets that had somehow remained hidden for centuries. Rickson was a veteran of many conflicts and had earned his position through decades of successful campaigns. He found Vex's claims difficult to believe. Humans were known throughout the galaxy as traders and diplomats, not warriors. Their technology seemed basic compared to advanced species like the Talarians. These readings must be incorrect, Rickson told his staff officers. Human ships are small and poorly armed. We have observed their military exercises. We know their capabilities. His intelligence officer, Commander Nex, disagreed. Sir, Captain Vex is one of our most experienced scouts. His equipment is calibrated regularly and has never produced false readings of this magnitude. I recommend we take these reports seriously. Rickson studied the data again, paying special attention to the energy signatures and weapon configurations described in the report. If even half of Vex's observations were accurate, humanity possessed military technology that surpassed anything the Talarians had developed. Assuming this intelligence is correct, Rickson said slowly, how long do you estimate it would take for humans to achieve full operational readiness? Nex consulted his tactical computer. Based on the activation patterns described in the report, their entire fleet could be combat-ready within 72 hours. However, sir, there may be additional assets that Captain Vex was unable to detect. The fleet commander made his decision. The Talarian High Council had been planning an expansion into human space for months. Intelligence had suggested that humans would offer little resistance to a well-planned invasion. If that intelligence was wrong, waiting would only make the situation worse. Prepare the invasion fleet for immediate departure, Rickson ordered. We will strike before they can complete their activation sequence. Even if they possess advanced technology, they cannot be fully prepared for combat this quickly. Back in the solar system, the awakening continued. On a hidden base built inside the asteroid series, Commander Blake received the activation signal and began the process of bringing his battleship online. The ship had been disguised as a mining station for over a century, but now its true nature was revealed. Blake watched as weapon systems emerged from concealed compartments along the hull. Point defense turrets unfolded like deadly flowers blooming in space. The main cannon, powerful enough to destroy a moon, slowly extended from the ship's central structure around him. His crew worked with practiced efficiency despite having been in suspended animation for decades. These men and women had volunteered for a mission that might last their entire lifetimes. They had trained for years before entering suspended sleep, preparing for the day when humanity might need them again. Status report, Blake called out as his bridge crew completed their awakening procedures. All systems coming online, sir, reported his tactical officer. Weapons charging normally, defensive systems operational. We should achieve full combat readiness within 18 hours. Blake nodded and opened a communication channel to the other ships in his battle group. Similar reports came in from vessels hidden throughout the asteroid belt. Each ship was larger and more advanced than anything humanity had ever publicly revealed. The commander looked at the tactical display showing the positions of all awakening fleet units. Warfleet Omega was enormous, containing hundreds of ships that had been patiently waiting for this moment. Each vessel represented years of secret research and development, built with technology that humanity had kept hidden from the galaxy. As the hours passed and more ships came online, Blake began to understand the true scope of what humanity had accomplished. They had not just built a hidden fleet. They had created an entire shadow civilization dedicated to protecting human space. From any threat, the awakening was only the beginning. Dr. Elena Martinez stood before the hastily assembled Earth Council, her hands shaking slightly as she held the classified documents that would change everything. As head of the Xenorchaeology department, she had spent years studying humanity's real history, but she had never expected to reveal these secrets to the world. Council members, she began, her voice steady despite her nervousness. What I'm about to tell you will be difficult to accept, but every word is true and verified by multiple independent sources. The holographic display behind her activated, showing images that had been hidden from the public for over 2 centuries. Photographs of burning cities, destroyed space colonies, and human refugees fleeing across the stars. The year was 2157. Humanity had just established its first colonies beyond the solar system when we encountered the Hegemony Empire. They were not interested in trade or diplomacy. They saw us as a threat to be eliminated before we could grow stronger. Elena changed the display to show tactical records from the war. Ship movements, battle reports, and casualty figures that painted a picture of near-total destruction. In 6 months, the hegemony destroyed 80% of human space infrastructure. Our colonies were burned, our fleets were scattered, and our population was reduced by half. We were weeks away from complete extinction when Admiral Kane and his staff developed what they called the Phoenix Protocol. A new image appeared showing plans for massive hidden shipyards and disguised military installations. Elena pointed to the various components of the secret network. Instead of rebuilding our military openly, we decided to play dead. We convinced the galaxy that humanity was broken, primitive, and no longer a threat. While they ignored us, we began the largest deception in galactic history. Council Chairman Davis leaned forward in his seat. You're saying that everything we've told other species about our capabilities has been a lie? Elena nodded grimly. Every trade mission was an intelligence-gathering operation. Every diplomatic contact was an opportunity to study potential enemies. Every human settlement in alien space was actually a military outpost in disguise. The display changed again, showing the current positions of human assets throughout the galaxy. Red dots marked locations on dozens of worlds, indicating the presence of hidden bases, concealed weapons, and undercover operatives. We didn't just hide our fleet in the solar system. We infiltrated every major government, every important military organization, and every significant trade network in known space. For 200 years, we have been watching, learning, and preparing. Meanwhile, in the Rigel sector, Captain Torres received an activation signal on a frequency that had been silent for decades. His cargo freighter, the Harmony, had been operating trade routes through alien space for 15 years. To any observer, it appeared to be exactly what it claimed to be, a simple merchant vessel carrying industrial supplies. But when the signal arrived, Torres activated hidden systems throughout his ship. Concealed weapon arrays emerged from cargo compartments. Defensive shields powered up from generators hidden behind false bulkheads. The ship's true nature was revealed as one of humanity's most advanced stealth warships. Torres opened a secure communication channel to other human assets in the sector. Similar transformations were taking place on dozens of ships and stations. Freighters became destroyers. Trading posts became fortress bases. Even individual humans revealed themselves as highly trained military operatives. This is Torres to all Phoenix assets, he transmitted on the encrypted channel. Warfleet Omega has been activated. Initiate full operational readiness and await further orders. Across the galaxy, the pattern repeated itself. Human merchants suddenly displayed military discipline. Diplomatic missions became command centers. Trade agreements were revealed as intelligence networks that had been operating under everyone's noses for generations on the Talarian homeworld. Intelligence Director Kell was frantically trying to understand the scope of human deception. Reports were flooding in from every sector of Talarian space. Human facilities that had seemed harmless for decades were suddenly displaying massive military capabilities. How could we have missed this? Kell demanded of his staff. Our intelligence services are supposed to be the best in the galaxy. How did an entire species hide a military force of this size? His chief analyst, a nervous young officer named Pike, consulted his data tablets before responding. Sir, preliminary analysis suggests that the humans have been planning this deception since before we first made contact with them. Every interaction, every treaty, every trade agreement was designed to make us underestimate their true capabilities. Kel activated a holographic map showing Talarian territory. Red warning indicators appeared at hundreds of locations where human assets had been identified. The scope of infiltration was staggering. They've been inside our defenses for over a century? Pike continued. Human traders have access to our military shipyards. Human diplomats have been present at classified strategy meetings. We've been completely compromised. The intelligence director felt a cold fear growing in his chest. If humans had penetrated Talarian security this thoroughly, what did they know about other species? How many governments had been infiltrated? How many military secrets had been stolen? Back on Earth, Admiral Kane was briefing the senior staff of Warfleet Omega through a secure communication network. Ship commanders from across the solar system appeared as holographic projections around the conference table. Ladies and gentlemen, Kane began, after 2 centuries of preparation, the Phoenix Protocol has been activated. Our long deception is ending and humanity is revealing its true strength to the galaxy. Commander Blake spoke from his position aboard the disguised battleship. In the asteroid belt, Admiral, what are our rules of engagement? The Talarian invasion fleet is approximately 18 hours from Earth space. Kane smiled grimly. Our primary objective is the protection of human civilization. However, we will demonstrate our capabilities in a way that discourages future aggression from any species. Commander Blake, you will take point position with Battle Group 7. Show them what human engineering can accomplish. Throughout the solar system, the awakening fleet began moving into defensive positions. Ships that had pretended to be mining platforms for decades revealed weapon systems that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever seen. Asteroids split open to release squadrons of fighters. Communication satellites deployed enough firepower to destroy entire fleets. Captain Vex, still hidden at the edge of the solar system, watched the transformation with growing horror. He had thought his initial observations were impressive, but the true scope of human military power was beyond anything he had imagined. Hidden factories were emerging from what had appeared to be empty space. Weapon platforms were rising from the surfaces of moons. Even the space around Earth itself was revealing defensive systems that could protect the planet from any conceivable attack. Vex began calculating the military strength he was observing. The numbers were terrifying. Humanity possessed enough firepower to fight every major species in the galaxy simultaneously. They had built a war machine capable of conquering the entire known universe, but what frightened Vex most was the realization that this was probably not even humanity's full strength. If they had hidden this much for 2 centuries, what other secrets were they keeping? What other preparations had they made? As reports continued to arrive from across the galaxy, it became clear that humanity's deception was complete. They had fooled everyone, infiltrated everything, and prepared for every possible threat. The galaxy was about to learn that the species they had dismissed as primitive and harmless was actually the most dangerous predator in known space. Fleet Commander Rickson stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion, as the Talarian invasion fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. 300 warships had answered his call, representing the largest military force the Talarian consortium had ever assembled. Deploy battle formations, Rickson ordered his captains. Intelligence suggests the humans may have more military assets than previously believed, but they cannot match our numbers or our experience. The Talarian fleet spread out in a classic invasion pattern, with heavy cruisers taking point positions and support vessels forming protective screens around the troop transports. It was a formation that had conquered dozens of worlds for the consortium, But as they advanced toward the inner planets, Rickson began to realize that something was wrong. His sensors were detecting energy signatures throughout the solar system that should not have existed. Objects that had appeared to be asteroids and space debris were powering up with military-grade reactors. "Sir," his tactical officer called out nervously, "I'm reading massive weapon signatures dead ahead. Something very large is hiding in the asteroid belt." Before Rickson could respond, space in front of his fleet began to change. What had appeared to be empty void suddenly filled with ships emerging from stealth mode. These vessels were enormous, each one larger than 3 Talarian cruisers combined. Commander Blake watched the Talarian fleet from his position aboard the battleship Prometheus. 2 centuries of preparation had led to this moment. Every system on his ship had been designed specifically to fight against alien invasion forces. "Target the lead vessels," Blake ordered his weapons officer. "We'll demonstrate human firepower with a surgical strike. Disable their flagship and destroy their forward escorts." The Prometheus opened fire with weapons that the galaxy had never seen before. Particle beam cannons that could punch through any known armor. Plasma torpedoes that created miniature stars on impact. Point defense systems that could track and destroy thousands of incoming missiles. Simultaneously, the first salvo from the human fleet devastated the Talarian formation. Rickson watched in horror as his most advanced warships were torn apart by weapons that seemed to violate the laws of physics. The human ships were not just larger than his vessels, they were centuries ahead in technology. "All ships evasive maneuvers," Rickson commanded, but it was already too late. The human fleet had surrounded his forces without him realizing it. Ships emerged from hiding places throughout the asteroid belt, behind moons, and even from within the gas giant ATMOSPHERES. Captain Torres, commanding the disguised freighter Harmony in Talarian space, received the signal to begin his part of the operation. For 15 years, he had operated in enemy territory, gathering intelligence and preparing for this moment. "Attention all Phoenix assets in Talarian space," Torres transmitted on the encrypted channel. "Operation Revelation is now active. Reveal your true nature and begin targeting military installations." Across dozens of Talarian worlds, human assets began their coordinated attack. Freighters that had been delivering supplies to military bases suddenly deployed weapon systems and began destroying their targets from within. Trading posts that had operated for decades revealed themselves as fortress bases with enough firepower to dominate entire star systems. On the Talarian military shipyard at Nexus Station, human engineer Marcus had been working as a civilian contractor for 8 years. When the activation signal arrived, he abandoned his cover and began sabotaging critical systems throughout the facility. Marcus moved through the station with practiced efficiency, planting explosive charges on reactor housings and severing control cables for defensive weapons. Around him, other human operatives were conducting similar missions, ensuring that the Talarian military would be crippled from within. "Security alert," announced the station's computer system. Unauthorized access detected in multiple restricted areas, but it was too late. The charges detonated simultaneously, destroying the shipyard's power grid and leaving its massive construction docks powerless. Similar sabotage was taking place at military installations throughout Talarian space. Back in the solar system, Fleet Commander Rickson was desperately trying to salvage his invasion force. Half of his ships had been destroyed or disabled in the first minutes of combat. The remaining vessels were scattered and unable to coordinate effective resistance. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving reports from home. Our military bases are under attack by human forces that have been hiding in our territory for decades. The damage is extensive." Rickson felt the weight of complete defeat settling on his shoulders. The humans had not just hidden their military strength, they had infiltrated his entire civilization. This was not a battle between fleets, it was the execution of a plan that had been centuries in the making. "Commander." Blake opened a communication channel to the surviving Talarian ships. His voice was calm and professional as he delivered humanity's message to the galaxy. Fleet Commander Rickson, this is Commander Blake of the human battleship Prometheus. You have entered our space with hostile intent, and we have responded appropriately. Your invasion fleet has been neutralized and your military infrastructure has been compromised. Blake paused to let the implications sink in before continuing. However, humanity does not desire unnecessary bloodshed. You will order your remaining ships to stand down and prepare to be escorted out of our territory. In return, we will provide medical assistance to your wounded and allow you to return home with a message for your government. The human commander's tone became harder as he delivered the warning that would echo throughout the galaxy. Tell your leaders that humanity has been watching and preparing for over 2 centuries. We know the location of every military base, every government facility, and every strategic resource in your territory. We have the capability to destroy your entire civilization in a matter of hours. Rickson realized he had no choice but to accept Blake's terms. His fleet was broken, his military was compromised, and continuing to fight would only result in the complete annihilation of his forces. I accept your terms, Rickson transmitted back. My ships will stand down and prepare for escort. As the battle ended, news of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy at the speed of light. Species that had considered humans to be primitive traders suddenly realized they had been dealing with the most advanced military power in known space on the Andorian homeworld. High Chancellor Rex called an emergency session of the Galactic Council. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to discuss the implications of humanity's revelation. For 200 years, we have underestimated the humans, Rex announced to the assembled delegates. They have infiltrated our governments, studied our weaknesses, and prepared countermeasures for every military strategy we possess. The Chancellor activated a holographic display showing intelligence reports from across the galaxy. Human assets have been identified in every major government, every significant military organization, and every important commercial network. We are not dealing with a newly emerged threat, Rex continued. We are dealing with a species that has been planning for galactic domination since before most of us achieved spaceflight. The question now is whether we can coexist with them or whether we must unite against them. But even as the galactic leaders debated their response, they knew the truth. Humanity had demonstrated that they possessed the capability to defeat any alliance that could be formed against them. The age of alien dominance in the galaxy was over. The humans had been patient, careful, and thorough in their preparations. They had turned the galaxy's tendency to underestimate them into their greatest weapon. Now, as their true strength was revealed, it became clear that humanity had been the dominant power in the galaxy all along. They had simply been waiting for the right moment to let everyone else know it. 6 months after the activation of Warfleet Omega, Admiral Kane stood on the observation deck of the massive battleship Leviathan as it orbited what had once been the Talarian capital world. The planet below showed signs of rapid reconstruction. Under human oversight, with new cities rising from the ashes of the old regime, Kane was no longer the retired old man who had been called back to duty. The advanced medical technology that humanity had secretly developed had restored his youth and vitality. He appeared to be in his 30s again, with decades of life ahead of him to oversee humanity's new role in the galaxy. Status report. General Morgan, Kane said to the woman standing beside him at the observation window. General Morgan consulted her tablet before responding. The integration process is proceeding ahead of schedule, Admiral. Former Talarian worlds are adapting well to the new administrative structure. Industrial production is up 30% since we took control of their infrastructure. Kane nodded with satisfaction. The transformation of Talarian space had been remarkably smooth, largely because humanity's intelligence networks had been preparing for this transition for decades. They knew exactly which officials could be trusted, which military units would cooperate, and which industrial facilities were most critical. What about resistance movements? Kane asked. Minimal and decreasing, Morgan replied. Most Talarian citizens have realized that human administration is more efficient and less corrupt than their previous government. Living standards have improved. significantly in the areas under our direct control. The Admiral smiled as he watched human transport ships delivering supplies to the planet below. Each ship carried not just food and medicine, but also teachers, engineers, and administrators who would help rebuild Talarian society according to human principles. In the outer sectors of what had been Talarian space, Captain Torres was overseeing the conversion of a major shipyard to human specifications. The facility had been building warships for the Talarian military for over a century, but now it would produce vessels for humanity's expanding fleet. Torres walked through the construction base where Talarian workers labored alongside human engineers. The cooperation between the species was remarkable, considering they had been enemies just months ago. But humanity's approach to conquest was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of enslaving defeated populations, humans offered them partnership in building a better civilization. Instead of destroying alien cultures, they integrated the best aspects of each species into their growing empire. The result was not just military domination, but genuine cooperation between different peoples. "Captain Torres," called Chief Engineer Davis as he approached with a status report, "the retrofit of Base 7 is complete. We can begin production of the new patrol ships next week." Torres examined the specifications for the new vessels. They incorporated the best of human technology with design elements that would be familiar to Talarian crews. The ships would serve in mixed-species units, with human officers commanding integrated crews. "Excellent work, Davis. What about the training programs for Talarian personnel?" "Proceeding smoothly, sir. Most of their engineers are eager to learn human technology. They're particularly impressed with our propulsion systems and defensive capabilities." Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Elena Martinez was briefing a group of newly revealed intelligence operatives about their next assignments. These men and women had spent decades living undercover in alien societies, and now they would help manage humanity's expanding influence. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elena began, "your long service in the shadows is finally being recognized. The information you gathered has been instrumental in our success, and now we need your expertise to help integrate new territories into human space." The operatives represented every major species in the galaxy. Some had been deep undercover for so long that they had nearly forgotten their human origins. Others had been working as traders, diplomats, and scientists while secretly reporting to human intelligence. "Agent Collins," Elena addressed a woman who had spent 20 years working in the Andromedan government, "you'll be returning to Andromeda Prime as our official ambassador. Your mission is to negotiate the peaceful integration of their territory into our administrative zone." Collins nodded professionally. "Understood, Doctor. I assume I'll have the full backing of the fleet if negotiations encounter difficulties?" Elena smiled. "The Andromedans are smart enough to recognize that cooperation is in their best interests. Our intelligence indicates they're already preparing to accept human oversight rather than face the alternative." Across the galaxy, similar conversations were taking place as humanity revealed the true scope of their infiltration. Every major government had been penetrated. Every important military organization had human agents in key positions. Every significant trade network had been monitored and influenced by human operatives. The revelation that humanity had been the dominant power in the galaxy all along was causing massive political upheavals. Some species attempted to form resistance alliances, but these efforts collapsed when they discovered that their own governments had been compromised for decades. On the bridge of the Leviathan, Admiral Kane received a communication from Fleet Admiral Harrison, who was overseeing operations in the Rigel sector. Harrison's holographic image appeared on the main display as he delivered his report. "Admiral Kane, the Rigel Consortium has formally requested admission to the Human Commonwealth. Their leadership has agreed to full integration in exchange for protection and access to our technology." Kane was not surprised by this development. The Rigel Consortium had always been one of the more pragmatic governments in the galaxy. They understood that fighting humanity would be futile and costly. "What about their military forces?" Kane asked. "They're being integrated into our defensive network," Harrison replied. Rigel ships will serve under human command, but their crews will retain their ranks and positions. We're following the same model that works so well with the Talarians. As the months passed, more and more species chose cooperation over resistance. Humanity's approach to galactic governance was unlike the brutal empires that had dominated space in the past. They offered genuine benefits to their subjects: advanced technology, improved living standards, protection from external threats, and participation in a growing interstellar civilization. The secret to humanity's success was patience and planning. They had spent 2 centuries studying every aspect of galactic civilization, identifying weaknesses and preparing solutions. When they finally revealed themselves, they were ready for every possible challenge. Captain Vex, the Talarian scout who had first discovered humanity's hidden fleet, now served as a liaison officer aboard a human battleship. His knowledge of Talarian military procedures made him valuable to his new human commanders, and he had adapted well to service in the integrated fleet. Captain Torres, Vex said as he approached his commanding officer on the bridge, the sensor arrays are detecting unusual energy signatures in the Centauri system. Should we investigate? Torres consulted his tactical display and smiled. Those aren't unusual signatures, Vex. That's just another sleeping fleet awakening. Humanity built defensive networks in dozens of star systems over the past 2 centuries. Vex shook his head in amazement. Even now, 6 months after learning the truth about human capabilities, he was still discovering new aspects of their preparation. Every time he thought he understood the scope of their deception, new revelations emerged. How many hidden fleets do humans have? Vex asked. Torres considered the question carefully before answering. Honestly, I don't think anyone knows the complete answer to that question. The Phoenix Protocol was designed with multiple layers of secrecy. Some assets are only revealed when specific conditions are met. The captain's words were both reassuring and terrifying. Reassuring because Vex now served with humanity rather than against them, but terrifying because it meant that even their allies didn't know the full extent of human power. As the first anniversary of the activation approached, Admiral Kane stood once again on the observation deck of the Leviathan. The view had changed dramatically over the past year. Where once there had been dozens of separate governments ruling small territories, now there was a single human-led commonwealth that spanned most of the known galaxy. Children played in parks on worlds that had been enemy capitals just months before. Former soldiers from different species worked together to maintain peace and order. Scientists from dozens of civilizations collaborated on research projects that would benefit everyone. Maya, the communications technician whose accident had started everything, now served as Admiral Kane's personal aide. She had been promoted several times and granted access to secrets that few humans ever learned. Admiral, Maya said as she approached with the daily intelligence briefing, we've received confirmation that the last independent government has agreed to join the Commonwealth. The galaxy is now unified under human leadership. Kane accepted the report and read through the details. The final holdout had been a small alliance of mining worlds in the Outer Rim. They had attempted to maintain their independence, but economic pressure and the promise of advanced technology had eventually convinced them to accept Commonwealth membership. Any resistance movements still active? Kane asked. Maya shook her head. Intelligence reports that organized resistance has effectively ended. Most former opposition leaders have either joined the Commonwealth government or retired to private life. There have been no terrorist incidents in over 3 months. The Admiral felt a deep sense of satisfaction as he looked out at the peaceful galaxy below. Humanity's 2-century plan had succeeded beyond their wildest expectations. They had not just survived the threat of alien aggression, they had transformed the entire galactic civilization. But Kane knew that this was not really the end of the story. It was the beginning of a new chapter in human history. Now that they controlled the galaxy, they would need to prove that they could govern it wisely and fairly. The greatest challenge would be maintaining the unity and cooperation that had made their victory possible. As humanity spread across thousands of worlds and integrated dozens of alien species, they would need to remember the lessons that had brought them this far: patience, planning, and the willingness to think in terms of centuries rather than years. These were the qualities that had made humanity the dominant power in the galaxy. As long as they remembered these lessons, the future would belong to them and their alien partners in the Commonwealth. Admiral Kane smiled as he watched transport ships carrying children from dozens of different species to integrated schools on the planet below. This was what humanity had been fighting for all along, not just survival, but the chance to build something better than what had come before. The galaxy was finally at peace. And humanity had proven that sometimes the greatest strength was the patience to wait for exactly the right moment to reveal it.